Ladies and gentlemen, this right here, this is the big one. This has got to be the most anticipated movie of 2021. This movie has had one of the biggest hype trains in recent memory. It's been just absolutely crazy. And it's important to keep in mind that this movie has had such incredibly high expectations ever since that first trailer. Actually, even before that, when we got the first reports about Jamie Foxx and Alfred Molina being in this movie. So, does this movie hold up to these monumental expectations? Somehow, yes. And you know what? I might as well get it out of the way right at the beginning. First, huge spoiler warning, like for real. Like, I've been pretty relaxed about spoilers in the past, and I've just kind of tossed them out casually. But really, like, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna answer the question you've all been waiting for. Okay? Here goes. Are Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the movie? No, they're not. Yep. Now, guys, I was so confident that they would be in it. Like, there really was no doubt in my mind. There was too much evidence, but dude, even still, when I saw this, I lost it. It was crazy, man. Like, obviously, we could imagine this meeting, like, while theorizing about how it would happen before this movie came out, but then actually seeing it, that's a whole nother thing. Like seriously, can we appreciate how crazy this is? 3 separate film series, actually 4, actually 5, in the real world that exist are now interconnected within each of those series' own continuities. That's wild. After all these men of spiders meet up, dude, it's gold, honestly. Like, a lot of their banter is what would be categorized as fan service, because it's just kind of there, just not really for the plot of the movie or in service of that, just kind of because the audience kind of is in on the joke. But I do not care, dude. It's like, there's this full scene where they just bro out, and I love it. There's also more broing out in this movie from the villains. They have plenty of time where they just talk to each other, and I love that. They're not wasting this opportunity to just have them kind of talk about different universes and their somewhat shared experiences, but their differences at the same time, and it's just cool. It's great. It's fascinating. Like, these characters whose stories ended years ago, in some case over 15 years ago, are like being continued in a new franchise, and they're carried on well. Like, the characters are good. They're interesting. Willem Dafoe. I love William. Guys, see what I did there? He's truly an actor in a class all by himself. And he goes ham in this movie. His performance it's truly manic. Like, he really is crazy and powerful. Like, literally. Like, he really just destroys shit, you know? It's something really well showcased in the second act, but unfortunately he kind of takes a backseat in the third act, which is something that I need to bring up. It's a bit of a problem. When dealing with so many villains, it's very hard to balance the screen time each gets, so there's definitely characters who get more, others get less. Like, Sandman really does not do much at all in the entire movie, but for the task of handling this balance, the movie does a good job. Another slight gripe is the big cliffhanger of the last movie was that Peter was revealed as Spider-Man, but after the first act, not much is really done with that plot point, and by the end, it's actually undone. Unlike the comic this movie is based on, which was very controversial in its time, similarly, Ned and MJ lose all memory of Peter. It's very likely that this will be undone again, because, I mean, these characters are critical to Spider-Man, right? But undoing that, you know, you're undoing an undo, it's kind of undermining of Peter's sacrifice at the end of the movie. But at the same time, it kind of makes for this brilliant, I'd say, bittersweet finale. So really, this bit isn't that big of a deal to me. To preface my next point with a very vague statement, I will say that this movie is fun. Something that happens a lot with Marvel movies is they use the best joke in the trailer, and then when you go to see the movie, you don't laugh at it. But this movie has plenty of good jokes, and is generally funny. And comedy is subjective, so if you thought the movie wasn't funny, good for you. It's also very emotional at the same time, though. Massive spoiler coming up. Aunt May dies. Really, it's truly tragic. and it's played very well by all the actors involved. It's also especially heart-wrenching because it's somewhat Peter's fault. Let me explain. Peter has the option to send back all the villains to their universes, but they're all dead there, so Peter wants to, quote-unquote, cure them. Now, this plot point is a little bit confusing and comes off maybe a bit contrived because they figure out how to cure them just like that. But the point remains the same, that it allows Green Goblin the opportunity to go on to kill Aunt May. But the other important thing is this decision to try and help the villains shows Peter's benevolence and unwillingness to kill, which is key to his character as Spider-Man. Also, some may argue that Peter gets over Aunt May's death too quickly, but there's a good heart-to-heart with the other Spider-Man right after, so I didn't really notice. I don't think it's too bad. I love the fight with Doctor Strange. This sequence was just really neat, man. Like we've seen the VFX stuff before with all the twisting buildings and stuff, but then you mix in Spider-Man, and it's a whole nother thing. He's not a magical character, right? So he's a fish out of water in this thing, but he still brings his own thing to the table, and it mixes into this just fantastic thing. Gonna be honest, guys, I love this movie. It is literally everything the hype cracked it up to be. But it's also kind of hard to put into words, because this movie is less so a movie as it is an experience, and one experience it is. But it's not perfect. I do recognize that it has flaws, so I'm going to give Spider-Man No Way Home an 8.5. Also, Willem Dafoe says in the movie, "I'm something of a scientist myself." It's pretty wacky.